Emily stared at the pregnancy test, her hand trembling. 2 pink lines. She had taken the test on a whim, not really expecting it to be positive, but now, staring at the undeniable result, her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. How could this be happening? She had always been so careful. The room seemed to close in on her, the walls pressing in as the reality of the situation began to sink in. She was pregnant. A wave of nausea washed over her, followed by a surge of fear. She clutched her stomach, feeling the weight of the new life growing inside her. The morning sickness had been a clue, but she had brushed it off as stress. Now it all made sense. The dizziness, the fatigue, the sudden aversion to her favorite foods. It was all because of the tiny being inside her. What was she going to do? She was young, barely scraping by, and alone. Her job at the diner barely covered her rent, and she had no savings to fall back on. The thought of bringing a child into her chaotic life was overwhelming. She had always dreamed of being a mother, but not like this, not under these circumstances. She felt a pang of guilt for even considering the alternatives, but she had to be realistic. Her boyfriend, Mark, had promised her the world, but Emily knew deep down that those promises were empty. They had been together for 2 years, but their relationship was far from stable. Mark had a tendency to disappear for days, leaving her to wonder if he would ever come back. He talked about their future together, but his actions never matched his words. She had hoped that he would change, but now she wasn't so sure. Emily took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She needed to think clearly. She needed to make a plan. She couldn't let her emotions cloud her judgment. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for the baby. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine a future where everything worked out. A future where she and Mark were happy, raising their child together. But the image was blurry, uncertain. She had to tell Mark. Maybe, just maybe, this news would change things. Maybe he would finally see the importance of their relationship and step up to his responsibilities. She picked up her phone and dialed his number, her hands shaking. The phone rang and rang, but there was no answer. She left a message asking him to meet her at their usual spot. She hoped he would show up. Maybe he would finally step up and be the man she thought he could be. She had seen glimpses of that man before, in the way he held her when she was sad, in the way he talked about their future. She clung to those memories, hoping that they were a sign of what was to come. She needed him now more than ever. She needed him to be her partner, her support, her rock. Hope flickered in her chest, a fragile flame against the cold wind of reality. She knew the odds were against her, but she couldn't give up. She had to believe that things would get better. She had to believe that Mark would come through for her. She had to believe that she could do this, that she could be a good mother, that she could give her child the life they deserved. She found Mark at his usual spot, a booth in the back of a dimly lit bar. He was nursing a drink, staring off into space. She took a deep breath and walked over to him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had rehearsed what she was going to say 100 times, but now that the moment was here, her mind went blank. She stood there for a moment, gathering her courage. He looked up as she approached, a bored expression on his face. "Hey," he said, his voice flat. Emily sat down across from him, her hands trembling. She took a deep breath and tried to steady her voice. "Mark, we need to talk," she said. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She could feel his indifference, his lack of interest. It made her heart ache. As Emily stammered out the news, his face hardened. She told him about the pregnancy, about the baby growing inside her. She told him how scared she was, how much she needed him. But his expression didn't change. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, staring at her with cold, unfeeling eyes. She felt a lump form in her throat, but she forced herself to keep talking. He didn't want this. She could see it in his eyes. He didn't want the responsibility, the commitment. He didn't want to be tied down. She had hoped that he would be happy, that he would embrace the news with open arms. But now, looking at his disappointed expression, she realized how naive she had been. She felt a wave of sadness wash over her, but she tried to stay strong. Her hopes, so recently ignited, crumbled into ashes. She had wanted so badly to believe that things would be different, that Mark would step up and be the man she needed him to be. But now she saw the truth. She was on her own. She would have to face this challenge alone. She felt a tear slip down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. She couldn't afford to fall apart. She had to be strong for herself and for her baby. Mark's reaction was worse than Emily feared. He didn't offer comfort, support, or even a shoulder to cry on. Instead, he turned cold and distant, his words like daggers piercing her heart. He told her she was on her own, that he wasn't ready to be a father. He even suggested she consider taking care of it. Emily left the bar, feeling numb. The world seemed to spin around her, a blurry kaleidoscope of neon lights and indifferent faces. She wandered aimlessly for hours, the weight of his rejection crushing her. How could he be so cruel? How could he abandon her at a time like this? The reality of her situation crashed over her. She was alone, jobless, and about to be a single mother. The small apartment she rented suddenly felt like a cage closing in on her. Despair threatened to consume her, pulling her under its dark waves. The following weeks were a blur of anxiety and fear. Emily's life had taken a turn she never anticipated. Each day felt like a battle against an invisible enemy, one that sapped her strength and left her feeling more isolated than ever. The once familiar faces in her neighborhood now seemed distant, their smiles replaced by indifferent glances. She often found herself wandering the streets trying to make sense of her new reality, but the answers eluded her. Emily lost her job at the diner, unable to keep up with the demanding hours and the constant nausea. The job had been her lifeline, a place where she felt a sense of purpose and belonging. But as her health deteriorated, so did her ability to perform her duties. Her boss, though sympathetic, had no choice but to let her go. The loss of income was a devastating blow, and Emily felt the weight of her circumstances pressing down on her even more. Her meager savings dwindled with each passing day, the threat of eviction looming over her head like a dark cloud. She meticulously counted every penny, trying to stretch her funds as far as they would go, but it was never enough. The eviction notice came as no surprise, yet it still felt like a punch to the gut. She stared at the paper, her mind racing with thoughts of where she would go and what she would do next. She was forced to move out of her apartment, her few belongings crammed into a worn suitcase. The apartment had been her sanctuary, a place where she could shut out the world and find some semblance of peace. Now it was just another loss in a series of unfortunate events. As she walked through the city with her suitcase in tow, she felt a profound sense of displacement, as if she no longer belonged anywhere. She found herself adrift in a city that suddenly felt vast and unforgiving. The bustling streets, once filled with opportunities and excitement, now seemed cold and unwelcoming. Every corner she turned, every street she crossed, reminded her of the life she had lost. The city, with its towering buildings and endless crowds, felt like a maze she couldn't escape from. She wandered aimlessly, searching for a sense of direction, but finding none. Loneliness gnawed at her, amplified by the constant worry for her unborn child. The thought of bringing a child into her current situation filled her with dread. She often sat alone, her hand resting on her growing belly, wondering how she would provide for her baby. The future seemed bleak, and the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. Yet, amidst the despair, there was a flicker of determination, a resolve to keep going for the sake of her child. She slept on friends' couches, each night a gamble, never knowing where she would lay her head the next. Her friends were kind, offering her a place to stay, but she knew she couldn't impose on them forever. The uncertainty of her living situation added to her stress, making it difficult to find any sense of stability. Each night as she lay on a different couch, she prayed for a miracle, for something to change her circumstances. The city lights, once a source of comfort and excitement, now mocked her with their indifference. They shone brightly, illuminating the night, but offered no warmth or solace. Emily often found herself staring at them, feeling a deep sense of alienation. The lights represented a world that continued to move forward, oblivious to her struggles. It was a stark reminder of how alone she truly was. Emily felt invisible, lost in a sea of strangers who didn't care about her plight. The crowds moved around her, each person absorbed in their own lives, their own problems. She felt like a ghost, unseen and unheard. The sense of isolation was suffocating, and she longed for a connection, for someone to acknowledge her existence. But the city, with its relentless pace, offered no such comfort. She clung to the faintest glimmer of hope, a tiny spark refusing to be extinguished. Despite everything, there was a part of her that believed things could get better. She held on to that hope, nurturing it like a fragile flame. It was the one thing that kept her going, the belief that somewhere, somehow, there was a brighter future waiting for her. And so she continued to move forward one step at a time, determined to find her way out of the darkness. Section 4. Letters to Hope. Emily found solace in writing. It was her escape, her sanctuary from the chaos of the world. The act of putting pen to paper allowed her to process her thoughts and emotions, to find clarity amidst the confusion. She would often lose herself in the rhythm of her words, the gentle scratching of the pen against the paper, a soothing melody that calmed her racing mind. Each night she would curl up in a corner of a park or a quiet library, a worn notebook her only companion. The world around her would fade away, leaving just her and her thoughts. The park, with its rustling leaves and chirping crickets, or the library with its hushed whispers and the faint smell of old books, became her refuge. It was in these moments of solitude that she felt most at peace. She began writing letters to her unborn child, pouring out her fears, her hopes, and her dreams for a better future. These letters were more than just words on a page. They were a lifeline, a way for her to connect with the life growing inside her. She would write about her day, her struggles and her triumphs, always ending with a message of love and hope. She named her baby Hope, a beacon of light in her darkest hours. The name was a promise, a reminder that no matter how tough things got, there was always a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. Hope became her guiding star, the reason she kept pushing forward even when the odds were stacked against her. "My dearest Hope," she would write, her hand moving furiously across the page. The words flowed from her heart, raw and unfiltered. She would write about her dreams for their future, the kind of life she wanted to build for them. She would promise to be strong, to never give up, no matter how hard things got. "I promise you things will get better." She would write these words over and over, as if by writing them she could will them into existence. She believed in the power of her words, in the strength of her love. She knew that as long as she had hope, she could face anything. "We will find our way, you and I. Together we will overcome any obstacle, any challenge." She would write about the adventures they would have, the places they would go, the memories they would create. She wanted Hope to know that no matter what, they would always have each other. "I will be strong for you, my little one. You are my everything." These words were a vow, a promise to always be there for her child. She would write about the love she felt, a love so strong it sometimes took her breath away. She wanted Hope to know that they were never alone, that they were always loved. The letters became her lifeline, a way to connect with the life growing inside her. They were a source of comfort, a way to express her deepest fears and greatest hopes. Each letter was a testament to her love, a promise that she would always fight for them both. They were a testament to her unwavering love, a promise that she would fight for them both, no matter the odds. She would write about the future she envisioned, a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. She wanted Hope to know that they were capable of achieving anything as long as they had each other. Each word she wrote was a prayer, a plea for strength and guidance. She would pour her heart out onto the pages, hoping that somehow her words would reach the heavens and bring them the strength they needed. She believed in the power of her words, in the magic of her love. And so she continued to write, each letter a beacon of hope in the darkness. Section 5. A glimmer in the darkness. One chilly afternoon, Emily found herself at a local community centre, drawn by the promise of a free meal. As she stood in line, her stomach rumbling, she noticed a flyer on the bulletin board. It advertised free prenatal classes, a lifeline for expectant mothers in need. Emily hesitated, her hand hovering over the flyer. Could she allow herself a glimmer of hope? Could there be a place for her, a place where she wouldn't be judged or rejected? Taking a deep breath, she tore off a tab with the address and clutched it tightly in her hand. That flyer became a turning point. It was a sign, a whisper of encouragement from the universe. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a surge of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, things were starting to look up.